Welcome back, boxing fans. So, after yesterday's dramatic fight, obviously a lot of emotions are high regarding the outcome of that fight. We've seen videos come out from all across YouTube, many people calling it a robbery, many people saying that Ortiz just did not fight in a style that made him deserve a fight. We had many people express their opinions regarding this. So now it's my turn. Obviously, yesterday, if you enjoyed my live broadcast of the fight, you heard my play-by-play action and the way I felt regarding the fight as it was unfolding. This is kind of 24 hours after what I thought about the fight. Overall, coming off of Keyshawn Davis and Abdullah Mason's fantastic performances, people were very excited about the possibility of having potentially a fight of the year type of fight between Ortiz and Lopez. And I think that was part of the problem. People's expectations were very high. And unfortunately, this turned out to be another top-ranked ESPN Thursday. We had a very boring, dull fight when Shakur Stevenson fought De Los Santos, and this fight turned out almost as bad. Not quite as bad, but very similar in outcome and style. People knew that Ortiz was a boxer, but people also had seen him previously be far more aggressive. Example, against Jamal Herring and against Lomachenko. So people expected him to be a far more aggressive fighter in this fight. Not necessarily bringing the fight to Lopez, but not necessarily running away from Lopez. And initially, that was a lot of the feeling that people were getting from the way he was boxing. I saw Ring IQ talk about how he felt that Ortiz was winning the first half of the fight, and then obviously dropped the ball in the second half. I felt it was very different. I thought in the first half of the fight he was very, very, very defensive and didn't let his hands go nearly as much. He picked and chose, obviously, the spots where he could throw. Example, when Lopez put himself on the ropes, and occasionally, in back and forth in the middle of the ring. But as the fight progressed, he started to win on every aspect of the fight. He was winning on the outside when they were in the middle of the ring. He was landing the more effective punches. He was letting his hands go, whereas Lopez was throwing Hail Marys and missing by a mile. The best work Lopez did was between probably round 5 to round 8 when he started to go to the body and use the jab to the body and the straight right to the body, which were pretty effective punches. And you could see that that really did have an impact on Ortiz and his movement and the way he was fighting. And those rounds, I felt that Ortiz lost and that Lopez was starting to grab momentum in the middle of the fight. It was kind of like when we saw Lomachenko fight Lopez. Lomachenko gave away the first few rounds because of inactivity, looking for the perfect opportunity and not necessarily getting the perfect opportunity, so thus getting beat just because of his low volume of punches. And this was something that was brought up before this fight even happened. I think it was Tim Bradley or whoever in the commentating group, but they compared this fight to, I think, Javier Martinez's fight, and talked about how you can lose a fight even though you're better just by being outpunched and outworked by an opponent. And that's what Ortiz was doing. At times, Ortiz moved far too much, which, made me feel that I was praying that Lopez would catch him or somehow continue to do what he was doing in the middle rounds. Go to the body and consistently not just throw Hail Mary shots at the head. But by around round 9, he went away from that again and started just throwing Hail Marys, going for the gusto, hoping that he was going to land, the Arturo Gatti knock you out in the last minute type of shot. And how much credit can you give a guy who looks as if he's despairing the possibility of even winning the fight and is going for a knockout because he feels he's losing on the card? And that's what I feel his corner was really telling him, and his father, which is why he went out and performed that way. In the 12th round, I also felt a round where historically he's done very well, that he didn't win the 12th round. Ortiz did better. I really don't see how you could give Lopez that fight. And I'm a guy who wanted Lopez to win. Coming into the fight, I was a little more down the middle, just happy to see a great fight between two good fighters. But as the fight progressed with the great opening and everything else, I was hoping that Lopez would do what we saw Keyshawn Davis and Abdullah Mason do earlier, make statements and really sort of propel himself up the American pay-per-view charts, the pound-for-pound list, as potentially one of the best American fighters. I was hoping for that because it would be great for boxing. Stylistically, personality-wise, he's a guy that actually moves the radar. Whereas Ortiz, personality-wise, is kind of lacking. Stylistically, he's not nearly as entertaining. And the way he went out to perform is just not the kind of performance that's going to galvanize a fan base. It's not going to make American boxing fans excited to see you defend your WBO title. So I was hoping, against all hope, that Lopez would win. But in saying that, when the final results were read, I was very disappointed by the judges. Not surprised, never surprised. Judging in the US is terrible. And the fact that it's always just American judges, unlike everywhere else in the world that actually has a mix of judges from around the world, you can see why there's so many terrible decisions in the US consistently. And this was just another one. At the end of the day, I'm kind of happy Lopez got the decision because he's still the WBO champion and we can look forward to him fighting good and exciting opposition moving forward. But at the same time, I feel gutted for Ortiz because he had a style fight designed to win. He went out and he did what he had to do, just as planned. He was able to orchestrate it perfectly, and I felt won more rounds. And at the end of the day, that's how you win. You win more rounds. Yes, I'm kind of like, what's his face? Smith, the old PBC fighter from 154. I'm like him. I'm old school, and I believe if you're going to beat the champion, you got to beat the champion, or else a lot of the close rounds are going to go to him by the judges, right? Historically, that's the way it was, and historically, I kind of think that's kind of the way things fall into place. A lot of people today don't feel the same way I do, so, you know, it is what it is. Everybody has a different take and a different opinion, but I kind of feel you have to beat the champion, and in this case, you know, that's true. Ortiz maybe didn't do enough to beat the champion. Maybe he didn't grab the bull by the horns as much as he could have. I felt he was winning the exchanges, so he could have easily been far more aggressive against Teo. But, you know, he decided to stay in character, to do what him and his team had planned, and just fulfill the game plan. And he did it. So at the end of the day, if you're not hoping to have a big name, a guy that's marketable as a champion, a guy that you can see in big fights moving forward, then you're probably happy Lopez won. If you're a guy who's just wanting the best fighter to win based on winning the most rounds, then you probably feel that Ortiz was robbed. And I think today, the day after, a lot of boxing fans feel that Ortiz was robbed. And because Ortiz isn't a big name, there's not that much screaming from the rafters. There's not that many YouTube videos being talked about claiming that this was a robbery. I see a lot of people defending it and justifying it, right? I saw Punch Drunk say that he thought the scorecard was 117-111, just like the judges. And I'm like, dude, for you to make that kind of judgment, everybody knows you're biased. You're a Lopez fanboy. So it's no surprise when you come out with a crazy skewed fucking scorecard like that. Any rational boxing fan knows that the fight could never have been 117-111 in Lopez's favor. That's way, 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 way too wide of a margin. The other two cards, you may disagree with them, but at least they were more competitive, right? 7-3, 8-4 type of rounds. You know, I felt that Ortiz won. It's unfortunate for him. Stylistically, he's not the kind of guy who's going to get a lot of opportunities, because when people see what he did against Lopez, they're not going to be jumping at the opportunity to face a guy that's so negative, right? This is a reason why Lopez and his team avoided Arnold Barboza. They avoided Arnold Barboza, drove him to Golden Boy, only to fight Jermaine Ortiz, who fought very similar, right? And put on just as boring and just a stinker of a video of a performance as Barboza would have. So, you know, it's kind of interesting to see what's next for Lopez. For Ortiz, you know, he's going to have to bite down on his gum shield and be a little more aggressive if he hopes to get more opportunities moving forward. Obviously, the best potential fight, according to the WBO, would be Jose Ramirez. Stylistically, that would be a great fight. Ramirez was a 2-belt unified champion. He's got a great resume, an exciting style, right? A U.S. Olympian, right? That fight, marketability-wise, East versus West, it's just a great matchup, a matchup that I would have loved to see. And that was supposed to be the fight that was made now. And can you imagine if that was the fight that would have happened on Super Bowl weekend? Ramirez, Lopez. We wouldn't be having this conversation today, right? Because that fight would have been far more exciting, it would have been far more definitive, and probably far less controversial than what we are talking about now. But unfortunately, Ramirez' team decided to go in another direction. They signed with Golden Boy as well. Now Golden Boy is really building up their stable, but at present they don't have any world champions. So they're going to have to obviously work with other promotional platforms to make fights. So let's hope that Golden Boy and Top Rank can come to terms to make a fight between Lopez and Ramirez. Because I think, especially coming off of this performance, that's the kind of fight Lopez needs. Nobody's going to criticize and hate on him for taking on Ramirez. They're going to see it as a really good fight. Stylistically, something that's obviously going to be more entertaining, right? Is going to be more fulfilling for the boxing fans. But, you know, a guy who deserves an opportunity, a guy who obviously was right there for a potential WBC world title fight with Cepeda. He pulled out because he was getting married. Then he had an opportunity to face Regis Prograis, but he decided against going in that direction. Now he had an opportunity to fight Lopez, and they decided to go against that opportunity. So you got to ask yourself, so what's going to happen? What other fight does Ramirez have that's as entertaining and potentially as profitable as this Lopez fight? And Lopez looks beatable now. So now would be the perfect time to jump on that and try to capitalize and you know, take advantage of obviously the flaws in his style, his lack of the ability to adjust in the ring, the one-dimensional approach that he tends to use. I mean, you know, Ramirez is similar, but that's why that fight potentially turns into a great fight. Obviously, on the heels of the Devin Haney-Ryan Garcia announcement, the winner of that fight against the winner of this fight, that's huge. Can you imagine Lopez and Haney facing each other after coming off of huge pay-per-view victories against Garcia and Ramirez? That's one of the biggest fights of 2024. It's a great fight. It's a unification fight. That's the fight that should be moved towards. And obviously Top Rank would have to work with Golden Boy, and then they'd have to work with Matchroom to make these fights happen. When you look at the rankings right now that I have on the video, you can see nobody in the WBO is a Top Rank fighter. So there's no opportunity for him to even fight an in-house fight against an in-house opponent any longer. And the other champions in the 140-pound division, there's no other top-ranked fighter either. Currently, of course, you have Subriya Matias, who just crossed over and went to Matchroom, joining Devin Haney. And then, of course, you have Rolly Romero, who is a PBC fighter, who's going to be fighting Isaac Cruz coming up sometime soon. And then, of course, you have Lopez. So there you are. That's the way the 140-pound division is lined up. So then, who are you going to fight? What fights can you make? And which fights are going to be big, marketable, big money fights? I think it's kind of a no-brainer. Hopefully the Ramirez fight is the fight that they aim for. I know that obviously he's calling out Bud Crawford. But right now, the possibility of him going up to 147 and fighting Crawford is almost as ridiculous as Bud Crawford going from 147 to 168 to fight Canelo Alvarez. They're just not fights that really make much sense. People aren't really that interested in them. You know, they seem like too big of a jump. Too big of a jump for Tio, too big of a jump for Bud Crawford. For Crawford, probably the best decision is to go towards potentially a Tim Tszyu fight, which would be huge and a great fight. For Lopez, the best possible fight for him would obviously be a Ramirez fight. But let me know what you think. Do you think that Lopez deserved to win yesterday, or do you think it was a robbery? Ortiz got shafted, screwed, fucked over? And what direction would you like to see Lopez go next? Who's next for him? What fight makes sense to you? Leave it in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, and share. And I will see you next time. Peace out. Enjoy your weekends. Happy Chinese New Year.